Good morning. Hi Arda, San Diego. I'm glad it's sunny down there. That's where my daughter lives. It's always wonderful to visit her. It's one of my favorite cities ever. Hi Robin. It might be foggy near the coast, Robin, but we're pretty sunny here in the foothills. Hi Lynn. Oh, it's sunny in Washington. Good. Hi Denise. Welcome everyone. It's good to have you here. Hi Bonnie. There are those of you who've just popped on that I know personally, and it's good to see friends on here and good warm memories. And then there are those of you who I just see your face on a little picture, but you've been here week after week, and it's really nice because I feel like we'd be friends if we walked into a room together, and that would be pretty special. So good morning everyone. All right, today we're going to move into our next two blocks for our Kona block of the month, and today we get to play with that elusive block called Pinwheel. And it either is a favorite, or it's difficult, or it's a hit and miss kind of thing, and it depends on which day it is for me what it's going to be. But I would like to share with you a picture that Marilyn sent to me of her first block, and beautiful workmanship. I love it. And she shared with me that she is making her quilt in somewhat of a sense of the temperature quilt. So she's using her own fabric, and so for her, cold and snowy and all of that for January or February, those winter months. So I think she did a beautiful job of choosing fabrics from her stash. She's not going completely solids, but keeping it fairly muted, it looks like. So beautiful job done, Marilyn, and great to see your work. And I love the idea of the whole, each month she's keeping a record of temperatures and what's going on weather-wise, and then she's creating a block to fit that. So great idea, and great theme, very clever. All right, so as always, please share your progress and what you're doing on the forum. Send me an email. It's right there on the screen, so you're welcome to do that, and I try to get back to you as soon as I can with that. So today we're moving into March and April. So different months with that, and we're going to be working with the pinwheel block, and I'd like to share a couple of things with you about fabrics and putting that pinwheel together so we get that center, to match as best as we can. And I know that when I get in a hurry and I'm sewing along and I'm, working hard at something, I, miss the boat on some things. And I'm going to share with you a block that I made that is acceptable, I think, but it's not quite on it. And so to share with you another way that we're gonna work with that. But I want to talk about lengthwise and crosswise grain. Probably nothing new to most of you, but if there are some that are on here and have been confused or haven't really paid much attention to lengthwise and crosswise grain of fabric, lengthwise is it's the weft and warp. When you make cloth, you have all your threads, and they either run, horizontal or vertical. And see, I can't even get that right. So anyway, and they weave it into it. So lengthwise is what is parallel to the selvage. And so the length of the thread going down your fabric, okay? And then the crosswise is what is selvage to selvage. And when you get a bolt of fabric, it's usually folded on the bolt, selvage to selvage. So that's crosswise. What happens in that is when we cut on the diagonal, or we're working with curves and things like that, you want that, crosswise or lengthwise to work with you on that. So lengthwise parallel to the selvage, and it hardly has any stretch at all. You really, if there's any, it's minute. And so then on the crosswise, selvage to selvage has some stretch, but not a lot. And here is where it took me a while to figure out, because I thought, well, there's got to be a big difference. And the truth is it isn't, because they're both considered straight of grain. So when I cut from selvage to selvage, I'm cutting on straight of grain. When I cut length, down my fabric, I'm cutting straight of grain. They're both described that way. And but when we're making something like a pinwheel, we're cutting on the diagonal across that center. And that's why we tend to sew before we cut. Because when we mark that center piece in there, and sew on each side, we are capturing that stretch. And it's going to, if you press an iron to it and you actually iron instead of press, you're going to get that curve in there, and you get it either lengthwise or crosswise, depending on how it's cut, and especially on curves and diagonals. So we do it that way, or we're very, very careful not to stretch the fabric when we work with it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, so that when we are doing a block, we have that straight of grain on the outside of the block, and this doesn't, that diagonal cut is not on the outside. So sometimes we cut full squares, sometimes we cut half squares, and then cut them again. So let me drop down to the table, get my face off of there. And so we're going to start with the march block. And as you can see, we have 8 seams coming together in the center. And so it adds bulk. And again, this is where, some say that it works really well to pressure seams open because they're flatter, they work, and yes, that's true. All of that. But again, I think that it needs to be how you sew and how that affects the outcome. When I sew and press open, and it's probably one of the biggest reasons why I don't open the fabric, other than I feel that it leaves holes when the fabric is stretched in the quilting process and all of that. And is that I get that little bit of gap-osis often. I'd probably say a good 60-40% of the time. A little bit of gap in here because the seams have come open, and if there's any discrepancy at all, it leaves a little gap there in the center. That's really not a big deal, and most of the time you don't even see it. But for me, it makes a difference in how the outcome of my block happens. Now in March, we have these corners, and it's kind of like a butterfly with a section on it. So what we want is for all of these to come together directly in the center. And so when we turn it over, what I do is I break this, that thread, and press them to the opposite sides. Now on this particular one, I did pretty well. It's a little bit off on this blue side where the green comes in, and so there is just a tiny bit of a gap there. No big deal. You won't even see it when it's quilted and washed and stuff. That's going to be invisible. But this one missed the mark a little bit more. And I sewed this together, and for whatever reason, these were fine, but this green one somehow got off. So I had to go to the back and figure out what took place. And what took place was I wasn't obviously paying close attention as I was sewing, and when this went under my machine, it slipped. All right, and so I have that gap there. And you know, most of the time we say, oh, that's not a big deal, because it was almost all the way halfway before I got back on track. And so that does adjust your block. And not happy with that. At some point, I'll take this out before I sew the quilt together and readjust that, because I'll see it every time. Once you see something, I can't unsee it. And so how do we get to not be slipping there with our pinning? Because I did pin. With our pinning, with what we do, and how do we go about doing that? So I would like to introduce or not introduce, but reintroduce this product. It's Acorn Precision piecing product, and it's glue. You know, you might have Roxanne, you might have a glue stick, you might have anything, and it doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter what glue you use. The reason I fell in love with this, and I'm kind of an advocate for it, because it dries clear, it's temporary, and it doesn't leave these globs, and it doesn't discolor on there, and I just find, and it dries quickly. I use my iron anyway as I'm drying it, but I really like it, as opposed sometimes when I'm working with, you know, the seams coming together like in this one. And of course, because I'm on camera, it may or may not happen today. So I've got 4 of these blocks, you know, and to be really honest with you, I sewed them well, I trimmed them, every point is right on. There should be no reason why I cannot get a, you know, a perfect seam, should there? And it should all work. And so as we put these together, I press them all to the dark side. And now I'm going to put these two together, and I just messed that up. I need to go. See, it takes me a minute. How did I have those? All right. I am totally confused. There we go. It doesn't take much. Okay. So now I have my pinwheel back. So I'm going to flip this over, and because I press them to the wrong sides, these seams are going to butt up against each other. And here is where I find that the glue works really well for me. And so as I open these up again, and see, I can get turned around really easy, because it's this side that I want to work on. So the first thing I'm going to do is get that corner in there really well. I'm really having some struggles today, you guys, forgive me. All right, so now I want to butt these 2 seams up against each other and get that to work in that corner really well. So I actually take my finger and push it in there. Now, it is true, I can pin it and get the results most of the time. I have no problem doing that on the majority of the time. So I'm going to just, for right now, drop a pin, and I'm going to hit it right on that seam line. But now I want to share with you the difference that a little drop of glue might make to you. So I'm going to put it right at the edge, because I don't want my sewing machine to go over it. And the drop is so minute you hardly even see it on the corner. In fact, I'm having trouble seeing it. And then I'm going to press it down. I'm going to make sure they're all aligned, and that glue is pressed in there. And I could go ahead and go, but I like to set the iron on it. And I use these very sharp Clover extra fine glass head pins because they make very small lump and move the fabric very little. But they still move the fabric, because when I take that pin out, I can still see, you know, the impression of that, and I saw the fabric, you know, moving along there. Again, this is just being silly, crazy with, you know, that. But I know now, because I've got that little piece of glue right there, it's not going to move, and it's going to stay where I want it to stay. All right. So let's go ahead and move my camera. And take that pin out. And again, you know, this is awkward. I still haven't gotten my machine back, but I go today to get it, so I'm excited about that. I'm using my 1/4 inch line here, as well as the foot, to make sure that I stay accurately at that 1/4 inch. And I've kind of had to relearn this machine again, so that I can do that. All right. And then when I open this, those two, you know, match up just the way I want them to. So now I'm going to press them. And again, if you're not sewing a 1/4 inch seam, they're not gonna match and hit the point where you want them to. So again, when I press, you just press the iron down. I run the side of my iron, and then I just let it sit there for a minute and have that up. Now I'm going to do the same thing with these two. So I'm going to put this across here, and I really want to make sure that I'm getting that corner, those two pieces right there, and that they definitely butt up against each other, and I can feel all the way down. And if I go a little bit further, I can really, you know, feel that they are in place and they're butting up against one another. So now I can do the pinning, and then I can drop that bit of glue right there on that corner, and you can hopefully see that those are butted up against each other. And I'm going to get one tiny drop of this glue right there in that corner. Bring it down, just touch the iron to it so that it dries a little bit quicker, and push that in. All right, now back to my machine. I take a few stitches in, and if I haven't put a pin down, you know, on a short seam like this, then I want to make sure that I do that. And you can also feel right here that those are locked in place, and make sure that you're getting that. All right, so I press that side to the left. So I want to, as this one comes in, I want to press it to the right side so that those two seams, so this one went left, I want to press this one to the right so that the seams come together. All right. Now, here comes, you know, the fun part is making sure that both of these seams work their magic here in the center. So I'm flipping this back, and I want the top of that one right there to meet and flow in. The other way to do that is to take your pin, bring it right to, bring it out at the top of this one and go in at the top of this. And this is the traditional way of pinning it, which is always good. Make sure that everything is aligning itself, and I hold that in place. Now what I'm going to do, because I'm going to, drop that glue in there, is I'm pulling this back and making sure that those, those two, the top of this one and the top of that one, are meeting. And then I'm going to take my glue and I'm going to drop it right at the edge away from my seam line. I'm going to get that back in alignment. Alright, and I have that, and now I'm going to make sure that the glue is dried and set. Sometimes when I'm doing this, I chain stitch, so I don't necessarily have to press it with an iron. Alright, so now I'm going to align these up here and make sure these are aligned at the bottom, and then under my and cross my fingers that this all comes out right. And also, I know you can't see on the screen, but right there is where those two seam lines cross, and if you are crossing just a breadth or a thread right there to the right of it, you should be good. And now I want to adjust this one again. And this is probably more fiddly than you want to be, and you may have already a great way that you do this, and that's wonderful. And I messed up. It's not right on there. And I will show you that probably when I put the glue on and moved it to that side, I'll show you right now why I don't think it worked. And isn't it great when you do this? This side slipped right in there, and I think I got it right from the start. And I want to show you what happened in my seam line. Here it was 1/4 inch, and then when I got to the lump, I allowed the machine with the back side to move up to less than 1/4 inch. So I missed that point right there. So I am going to go back to make sure that that point is correct. And this is one way that sometimes I do some correction. I get it to where it was still at 1/4 inch, which was right in about there. And let's go on this side and let's see if I can make sure that I get that under there a little bit better where I really want it to work. Okay, and I'm just going to re-sew it off. It's easier than trying to pull it out. Alright, so let's open it. And still didn't get it, so I'm going to take those two seams out and work on that. So you can see that where it slipped on that side. The other three all match up and they look great. This one moved on me again. I'm going to blame it on the machine. Is that okay with you guys? If I blame that on the machine instead of on me? So, again, and that wasn't a good advertisement for that glue because I moved it without keeping the pin in it. So again, this is the result, more or less what you want on that, and that was in the March. But you can, try and do the pins, but right now I want to go to your questions and your comments. Let's see what we have here. Definitely machine. Thanks, Kristen. I appreciate that from you. Straight inverse across the grain. All right. You guys are welcome for, I enjoy being on here, and I really do enjoy teaching. And in a classroom, we would take that out, we would redo it. It would be a whole different story. All right. Okay. I'm not seeing a whole lot of questions on there. I'm not sure I understand, Barbara. It is not a pinwheel. Did I sew it wrong? And I did. That's probably, I'm going to say that's why it's all messed up. Look, see, I turned it again. I turned it. Silly me. This one should be going that way, and I flipped it again. It's easy for me to do, and I'm going to say it's why this got messed up. And so there you go. Thank you, Barbara. I didn't even look. See, I was looking at it as I was doing it, and I totally missed that. Well, there you go. Not one of my better days. And so now we go to April. And again, that pinwheel is in the center of this one. And you've got 3 half square triangles in this block. But this particular one goes the same way that, like the basket block, the tree of life block, those are the first 2 that come to mind. But you'll get a configuration like this often in your blocks. And so again, the same thing with that center, and you should have this cute little block in the middle on the back is how I pop those seams and do that. And then here is a pinwheel where they all came together for the center of this particular block. And obviously on my own, I managed to actually make a pinwheel. So pinwheels were what was going on today. And my apologies. I would make another one, but I don't have the blocks prepped or ready to go so that you could watch me mess up again on that. All right. So the glue does do a great job when you go slowly and carefully. Leave the pin in. I even use my wool mat on my pressing station to push the pin through on that all the way through it into my wool mat, and that way when I pull it back, I'm not messing with it. And I know right now as I'm thinking through it, I did not readjust after I pulled the pin out to make sure before I touched the iron to the glue and solidified it. So the glue does work really well. Pins work really well. However, you need to do that to get the result that you want to look at. So for next week, let's go back here. We have May and June. May, we have one of these square and a square blocks. We're going to do it as a half, again with half square triangles. And this one is both, they look like flying geese, but they're made as half square triangles. And we're going to look at some reverse things, and we're going to look at that center point again. We'll be doing one with and without pins and glue. So, May and June. And I'm kind of excited to see Marilyn's temperature because, May here, because that's when the flowers are starting to come back and stuff. And so, just for the month-wise, if I was following, weather or something, I probably wouldn't have chosen those colors, but boy, June is starting to get bright and happy again. So look forward to that. The cutting instructions are on the back, and by now you, if you have not received your 3 and 3/4 yards of fabric, if you bought a kit, they should be coming soon. I just got mine, and so continuing on with those in that for next week, and grain and lengthwise and crosswise grain, and where to put your you don't want to put your diagonal on the outside of the block because that's where it stretches and you can get off on that. So next week, have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I will see you back next time.